The blood on Adelaide Owens's hands belonged to a man who would never hurt anyone again. But that knowledge did nothing to stop the trembling that seized her body as she stood in the dim lamplight of the trading post outside Fort Laramie, Wyoming Territory. In the summer of 1876, she had killed him. The outlaw who had burned her family's homestead 3 years prior, who had left those marks on her arms and back and soul, lay dead in the dirt 20 miles south. Self-defense, clear as day, but Adelaide knew the law rarely sided with a woman, especially one already marked by tragedy. So she ran. She took his horse, his gun, and what little money he carried, and she rode hard through the night until the animal nearly collapsed beneath her. Now she stood in this ramshackle store that smelled of tobacco and leather, and tried to steady her breathing while the proprietor eyed her with suspicion. Her dress was torn, her dark hair had come loose from its braid, and she knew she looked exactly like what she was, a woman running from something. "Just need supplies," Adelaide said, keeping her voice low. "Enough for a week." The proprietor, a weathered man with gray whiskers, nodded slowly. "You got money?" She placed coins on the counter with hands that still shook. He gathered them up, counted them carefully, then began assembling her order. Dried meat, hardtack, a small bag of cornmeal, coffee. The essentials. The door opened behind her, and Adelaide's hand went instinctively to the gun at her hip. She turned halfway, ready to run or fight, whichever proved necessary. The man who entered was tall, broad-shouldered, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of the summer sky. He wore dusty trail clothes and a hat pulled low, and he moved with the easy confidence of someone who knew exactly who he was and what he could do. When those blue eyes landed on Adelaide, they held curiosity but not threat. "Evening, Samuel," he said to the proprietor, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to resonate in Adelaide's chest. "Keane, thought you were up north with the cattle drive. Just got back, lost 2 head to rustlers, but the rest made it to market." The man called Keane glanced at Adelaide again, and this time she saw concern flicker across his features. "Madam, you hurt?" Adelaide looked down and realized her sleeve had torn further, revealing the old scars that crisscrossed her forearm. Burns, mostly, with a few knife marks mixed in. She quickly pulled the fabric to cover them, but it was too late. "I am fine," she said sharply. "Just need my supplies and I will be gone." Keane held up his hands in a peaceable gesture. "Did not mean to pry, just looked like you might need help." "I do not need anything from anyone." Samuel finished packing her supplies into a canvas bag and pushed it across the counter. Adelaide grabbed it, nodded curtly to both men, and headed for the door. "Hold on," Keane said. "It is near midnight. You planning to ride out in the dark?" "That is my business." "True enough. But there are Sioux raiding parties between here and anywhere you might be headed. War parties, angry about what happened to their people down south. A woman alone would not stand much chance." Adelaide's jaw tightened. She knew he was right. The frontier was never truly safe, but tensions had been running especially high since the Battle of Little Bighorn just weeks ago. Still, staying felt more dangerous than going. "I will take my chances," she said. She pushed through the door into the cool night air. Her stolen horse stood at the hitching post, head down with exhaustion. She felt a pang of guilt for the animal. It had carried her far and hard and deserved better than another midnight ride. Behind her, she heard the door open and close again. Footsteps approached, unhurried. "My ranch is 2 miles east," Keane said. "You could stay in the barn tonight. No charge, no questions. Just a safe place to rest until morning." Adelaide turned to face him. In the moonlight, she could see his features more clearly. He was perhaps 25 or 26, with a strong jaw and a face that suggested both hardness and kindness, as if life had tested him but not broken him. There was a scar along his left temple, faded with time. "Why would you offer that?" she asked. "You do not know me." "No, I do not. But I know what running looks like, and I know that whatever you are running from, you probably have good reason." He shifted his weight, hooking his thumbs in his belt. "I am Keane Whitmore. I run cattle on land my father left me. I employ 3 ranch hands, all good men. We mind our business and try to do right when we can. That is all." Something in his voice made Adelaide want to trust him, which immediately made her suspicious. Trust had been burned out of her 3 years ago on a night that still haunted her dreams. "How do I know you are not worse than what I am running from?" she asked. Keane considered this seriously. "You do not. But your horse is about done in, you look ready to drop, and if you head out now, you likely will not make it 5 miles before something bad happens. At least at my ranch you would have walls and a locked door." Adelaide studied him for a long moment. Her instincts, usually reliable, did not scream danger. Instead, they whispered that this man might actually be what he claimed, someone trying to help. "One night," she finally said. "I leave at first light." "Fair enough." He walked to his own horse, a strong-looking bay gelding, and swung into the saddle with practiced ease. Adelaide mounted her exhausted stolen horse and followed Keane east along a dirt road that cut through scrubland dotted with sage. They rode in silence. Adelaide kept her hand near her gun and her senses alert, but Keane made no threatening moves. He simply rode ahead, occasionally glancing back to ensure she still followed. True to his word, they reached his ranch within half an hour. It was a modest operation. A main house of timber and stone, a large barn, a corral with several horses, and a bunkhouse where presumably his ranch hands slept. Lamplight glowed in one window of the bunkhouse, but otherwise the place was dark and quiet. Keane dismounted and led his horse toward the barn. Adelaide followed, watching as he lit a lantern that cast warm light across stalls and stored hay. "You can put your horse here," he said, indicating an empty stall. "There is water and feed. He looks like he could use both." Adelaide led the horse into the stall and removed the saddle with tired arms. The animal immediately went for the water trough, drinking deeply. She gave him feed and stroked his neck apologetically. "He is not mine," she said quietly. "I took him. I figured." She turned to look at Keane, expecting judgment, but saw only that same calm regard. "Sometimes we do what we have to," he said. "I am not here to decide what that means." He showed her to an empty stall that had been converted into a small storage room. There was a cot with clean blankets, a basin of water, and a lamp. "This was meant for my foreman, but he preferred the bunkhouse with the other men. You can lock it from the inside." Keane pointed to a simple but sturdy bolt on the door. "The house is 50 yards that way. If you need anything, just call out. Someone will hear." Adelaide set her bag down on the cot. "Why are you being kind to me?" Keane was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. "About 5 years ago, my sister ran from a man who hurt her. She did not make it to safety. Someone found her body 2 days later in a ravine. I always wondered if things might have been different if someone had offered her help along the way." The words hit Adelaide like a physical blow. She saw her own story reflected in his, all the pain and what-ifs that came with losing someone to violence. "I am sorry," she said, and meant it. "Me too." Keane turned to leave, then paused at the door. "You are safe here, miss. I give you my word on that." After he left, Adelaide bolted the door and sank onto the cot. Her body ached with exhaustion, but her mind raced. She had killed a man today. Shot him when he reached for her, when she saw recognition in his eyes and knew he remembered what he had done to her and her family. The law might call it murder. It might call it justice. She did not know which it was. only that she had pulled the trigger and watched him fall and felt both horror and relief in equal measure. She rolled up her sleeves and looked at the scars that marked her skin. Burns from when he had held her down near the fire, laughing as she screamed. Cuts from his knife as he threatened worse. She had these scars and others hidden beneath her clothes, and each one was a chapter in a story she wished had never been written. Adelaide lay back on the cot and closed her eyes, but sleep was a long time coming. When dawn light filtered through the cracks in the barn walls, Adelaide woke with a start. For a moment she did not remember where she was, and panic seized her. Then memory returned. Keane Whitmore, the ranch, the promise of safety for one night. She rose, splashed water on her face from the basin, and tried to tame her hair back into something presentable. Her dress was beyond help, torn and stained from days of hard travel. She was a sight, she knew, but there was nothing to be done about it now. When she unbolted the door and stepped out into the barn, she found Keane already there, tending to the horses. He looked up and nodded a greeting. "Morning. There is breakfast up at the house if you want it." Nothing fancy, just eggs and bread. Adelaide's stomach growled at the mention of food. She had not eaten properly in 2 days, but accepting more help felt dangerous, like building a debt she could not repay. "I should go," she said. "Your horse should not be ridden for at least another day." "You pushed him too hard. He needs rest." Adelaide walked to the stall and saw that Keane was right. The horse stood with its head low, favoring one foreleg. Guilt washed over her again. "I did not mean to hurt him," she said quietly. "I know, but facts are facts. You ride him now, you might lame him permanently. He is actually a decent animal, probably worth something to whoever you took him from. He is dead. The man I took the horse from." Keane straightened, studying her face. "Did you kill him?" Adelaide met his eyes. "Yes. Did he deserve it?" "Yes." Keane nodded slowly. "Then I would say that horse is yours now, fair and square, but he still needs rest. Stay another day, let him recover. You look like you could use the rest yourself." Every instinct told Adelaide to refuse, to keep moving, but exhaustion and hunger and the sight of that limping horse made her weak. She found herself nodding. One more day. Breakfast was indeed simple, but it was hot and plentiful. Keane's ranch hands joined them. 3 men named Thomas, Robert, and James, all in their 30s or 40s, weathered by sun and work. They greeted Adelaide politely but without excessive curiosity, as if strange women appeared at the ranch regularly. "We are riding out to check the north fence line," Thomas said to Keane. "Should be back by supper." "Good. I will work on those repairs to the barn roof." The men left, and Adelaide found herself alone with Keane in the simple kitchen. She helped wash the dishes in silence, hyper-aware of his presence nearby. "You do not have to work," he said. "You are a guest. I do not like being idle." He accepted this without argument. When the dishes were clean, he led her outside where bright morning sun illuminated the ranch in golden light. The land stretched endlessly in all directions, broken only by distant mountains, and the occasional stand of cottonwoods marking a creek bed. "It is beautiful," Adelaide said, surprising herself by speaking the thought aloud. "It is. My father chose this spot 30 years ago, built everything from nothing." Keane looked out over the land with obvious pride and affection. "It is not much compared to the big spreads down south, but it is mine. Ours, I suppose. My mother still owns half, though she lives in town now." Adelaide wanted to ask about his sister, the one who had not escaped, but the words felt too intrusive. Instead, she said, "You are fortunate to have this." "I know it." He looked at her thoughtfully. "What about you? Where were you headed? Away?" "That is a direction, but not much of a destination." Adelaide wrapped her arms around herself despite the warmth. "I had a homestead once, a family." That is gone now, so away is all I have." Keane was quiet for a moment. "The scars on your arms, those from when you lost your family," she stiffened, instinctively pulling her sleeves down despite the heat. "That is none of your business." "You are right, I apologize." He paused. "But I will say this. Whatever happened to you, it does not define you. Scars are just proof you survived something. They tell where you have been, not where you are going." The words, kindly meant, made anger flare in Adelaide's chest. "You know nothing about it. You do not know what it is like to be held down and hurt while men laugh. You do not know what it is like to watch your home burn with your parents inside while you can do nothing but run and hide. So do not tell me what my scars mean." She expected him to recoil, to defend himself, to turn cold. Instead, Keane's expression filled with such genuine sorrow that it took her breath away. "You are right," he said quietly. "I do not know what that is like, and I am sorry for presuming. What happened to you was evil, and nothing I say can change that." Adelaide felt tears threaten and blinked them back furiously. She had not cried in 3 years. She would not start now. Keane seemed to sense her struggle. He turned away, giving her space, and began walking toward the barn. "I need to get to that roof repair. You can rest in the house if you want. There are books if you read, or you can walk the property. You are free to do whatever you like." He left her standing there in the yard, and Adelaide felt oddly bereft. She was not used to kindness. She was not used to someone respecting her boundaries while still offering comfort. It confused her, this gentle cowboy who seemed to see past her defenses to something worth protecting. She spent the morning walking the ranch, keeping to its edges like a wild animal testing the boundaries of a new territory. She found the creek Keane had mentioned, lined with cottonwoods that rustled in the breeze. She sat there for a long time, listening to the water and trying to quiet the turmoil in her mind. By afternoon, she found herself back at the barn. Keane was indeed on the roof, replacing damaged shingles with steady, practiced movements. He had removed his shirt in the heat, and Adelaide could see scars on his back as well. Long, straight marks that looked like they came from a whip. He glanced down and saw her watching. "Hand me that bucket of nails," Adelaide complied, passing up the bucket when he climbed down the ladder. Up close, she could see the scars more clearly, at least a dozen lashes, old but unmistakable. "What happened to you?" she asked. Keane followed her gaze and gave a rueful smile. "When I was 19, I worked for a rancher up in Montana. Mean son of a gun who liked to use his whip on men and horses alike. I objected to how he treated a young wrangler who worked there, a kid barely 16. The rancher took exception to my objection. What did you do?" "Left as soon as I could, brought the kid with me. He works for a good outfit in Colorado now, last I heard." Keane set the bucket down and met her eyes. "Point is, we all have scars, Miss Owens. Some show on the outside, some do not. They do not make us broken. They make us human." "How do you know my name?" Adelaide asked, suddenly suspicious. "You said it in your sleep last night. I came to check on you around midnight, heard you calling out. You sounded distressed, so I called your name and you settled. I hope that does not upset you. I just wanted to make sure you were all right." Adelaide did not know what to feel. The thought of anyone watching her sleep was deeply unsettling, yet she believed his explanation. There was something fundamentally honest about Keane Whitmore. "I have nightmares," she admitted, "about what happened." "That makes sense. Would be strange if you did not." They worked together through the afternoon, Keane on the roof and Adelaide passing him supplies. It was simple, physical work that left little room for dark thoughts. As the sun began to set, the ranch hands returned and everyone gathered for supper. The meal was boisterous, full of the easy camaraderie of men who worked well together. They included Adelaide naturally. asking her opinion on small matters and sharing jokes that made her almost smile. It had been so long since she had been part of something normal that she had forgotten what it felt like. After supper, Keane walked her back to the barn. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple, and the first stars were emerging. "Your horse looks better," he said. "Should be fine to ride tomorrow if you still want to leave." Adelaide looked toward the stall where the animal rested. "I do not know where to go." It was the most honest thing she had said since arriving, and the admission cost her. She had built her identity around being strong, around needing no one, and now here she was confessing weakness to a man she barely knew. Keane leaned against the barn wall, his expression thoughtful. "You could stay here." "What? Stay here? Work the ranch?" "We could use help, and you seem capable. Pay is not much, but it includes room and board." Adelaide shook her head. "You do not know me. I could be dangerous." "Could be. But I do not think you are. I think you are someone who has been hurt and is trying to survive. There is no shame in that." "I killed a man yesterday," she reminded him. "A man who hurt you and yours. That is not murder in my book. That is justice finally being served." Adelaide wanted to accept. The thought of staying here, of having a place and purpose, was almost painfully appealing, but fear held her back. "What if he has friends?" she asked. "What if someone comes looking for me? Then we will deal with it. You would not face it alone." The simple certainty in his voice made something in Adelaide's chest ache. When had anyone last promised to stand with her? "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you risk that?" Keane was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low and sincere. "Because everyone deserves a place to heal. Because you deserve safety and peace. And because something in me recognizes something in you, and I would like to know you better if you will allow it." Adelaide looked up at him in the fading light. His face was open, vulnerable in a way she had not expected from a rough rancher. He was offering more than just work. He was offering sanctuary and maybe something deeper that neither of them had quite named yet. "I do not know how to do this," she said. "I do not know how to trust or feel safe anymore." "That is all right. You can learn. And you do not have to decide everything right now. Just decide about tomorrow. Stay one more day, then decide about the day after that. Keep going until you either want to leave or you realize you have made a home." It was the gentleness of his approach that undid her. He was not pushing, not demanding, just offering. And Adelaide, so tired of running and hiding and hurting, found herself nodding. "One more day," she said. "Then we will see." Keane's smile was like sunrise, warm and bright. "That is all I ask." That night, Adelaide slept more soundly than she had in months. And when morning came, she decided on one more day, and then another, and then another. The days turned into weeks, and Adelaide found herself settling into the rhythms of ranch life. She learned to tend cattle, to mend fences, to shoot accurately at targets Thomas set up for her. The work was hard but satisfying, and at night she fell into bed too tired for nightmares. Keane was patient with her, never pushing but always present. He taught her to rope cattle, laughing when she missed and praising her when she succeeded. He showed her the best fishing spots along the creek and the places where wild strawberries grew. Slowly, carefully, they built something between them. Trust first, then friendship, and beneath it all a growing attraction that neither quite acknowledged. One evening about 6 weeks after her arrival, Adelaide was washing dishes when she felt Keane's presence behind her. She had grown attuned to him, could sense when he was near. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "You just did." She heard the smile in his voice. "Fair point." "Can I ask you something else?" Adelaide dried her hands and turned to face him. "What is it?" Keane seemed uncharacteristically nervous, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "There is a dance in Fort Laramie next Saturday. Nothing fancy, just townspeople gathering for music and socializing. I wondered if you might want to go with me as my guest. Adelaide's first instinct was to refuse. The thought of being around strangers, of being looked at and judged, made her stomach clench with anxiety. But then she saw the hope in Keane's eyes and remembered all the kindness he had shown her. "I do not have anything to wear to a dance," she said, which was not quite a refusal. "There is a dress shop in town. We could get you something." "I do not want your charity." "It would not be charity. You have been working here for weeks and have not taken any wages. Consider it back pay." When she hesitated, he added, "Adelaide, you have been hiding on this ranch like it is a fortress. I understand why, but at some point you have to decide if you are going to live again or just survive. I would like to help you live if you will let me." The words hit home. She had been hiding, she realized, using the ranch as a shield against the world, and while that had been necessary at first, maybe Keane was right. Maybe it was time to take a step forward. "One dance," she said. "And if I want to leave early, we leave. Deal?" The trip to Fort Laramie was Adelaide's first time leaving the ranch since her arrival. She rode beside Keane in the wagon, watching familiar landscape pass by with new eyes. The territory seemed less threatening now, more like a place where she might actually belong. The dress shop was small but well stocked. The proprietress, a kind woman named Mrs. Henderson, showed Adelaide several options. Most were too fancy, too impractical. But then Adelaide saw a simple dress in deep blue cotton with long sleeves and a modest neckline. It was pretty without being ostentatious, and the sleeves would cover her scars. "Try it on," Keane encouraged. Adelaide disappeared into the back room and changed. The dress fit well, hugging her waist and falling in gentle folds to her ankles. When she emerged, she saw Keane's eyes widen. "You look beautiful," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her blush. She had not thought of herself as beautiful in years, had not allowed herself to be anything but a survivor. But standing there in that blue dress with Keane looking at her like she was something precious, Adelaide felt a flicker of her old self. The girl she had been before the burning, before the scars, before she learned that the world could be cruel. They purchased the dress along with new boots and a ribbon for her hair. Adelaide protested the expense, but Keane insisted. "You have earned this and more," he said. "Besides, I want everyone at that dance to see how lucky I am." On the day of the dance, Adelaide bathed in the creek and carefully arranged her hair, weaving the new ribbon through her dark curls. She put on the blue dress and studied herself in the small mirror Keane had brought to her room. She looked almost normal, almost whole. The dance was held in Fort Laramie's largest building, a combination trading post and meeting hall. When Adelaide and Keane arrived, it was already full of people. Fiddle music filled the air and couples spun across the makeshift dance floor. Adelaide's anxiety spiked immediately. So many people, so many eyes. She felt exposed, vulnerable. Her hand found Keane's arm and gripped tight. "I am right here," he said quietly. "We can leave any time." But as they entered, Adelaide realized that no one was staring at her. No one seemed to care about her scars or her past. They were just people enjoying an evening of music and community. Several of Keane's friends came over to greet them, introducing themselves to Adelaide with genuine warmth. Keane led her to the dance floor. "I should warn you, I am not the most graceful dancer." Adelaide laughed, surprising herself. "I have not danced in years. We will be equally terrible." They were not terrible, though. They moved together naturally, Keane's hand warm at her waist, her hand in his. The music carried them, and for those few minutes Adelaide felt light, free. Like maybe the weight of her past was not quite so crushing after all. Between dances, they stood at the edge of the room sipping punch. A woman approached, middle-aged and elegant, with Keane's blue eyes. "Mother," Keane said, clearly surprised. "I did not know you were coming." "I would not miss it. The whole territory will talk about Keane Whitmore bringing a mystery woman to the dance." She turned to Adelaide with a kind smile. "I am Margaret Whitmore, and you must be Adelaide. How did you? My son visits me every week and talks about little else. I feel like I already know you." Margaret took Adelaide's hand gently. "I am glad you are here, dear, truly." There was something in Margaret's eyes that suggested she understood more than she said. Perhaps Keane had told her about Adelaide's past, or perhaps she simply recognized the signs of trauma. Either way, Adelaide felt no judgment from her, only acceptance. As the evening wore on, Adelaide relaxed. She danced with Keane several more times, and once with Thomas, when Keane was cornered by a rancher discussing cattle prices. She even found herself laughing at a joke Robert told, genuine mirth bubbling up from somewhere deep inside. On the ride home, Adelaide leaned against Keane's shoulder, pleasantly exhausted. The stars above were brilliant, and the night air was cool and sweet. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For tonight. For showing me I can still be part of the world." Keane's arm came around her, and Adelaide let herself relax into his warmth. It felt natural, inevitable, like something that had been building since the moment they met. "Adelaide," he said, his voice low, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I am falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them. Adelaide's heart pounded. Part of her wanted to pull away to protect herself from the vulnerability love required. But a larger part, the part that was healing, that was learning to trust again, wanted to move closer. "I am scared," she whispered. "I know." "I am too, but I think what we have is worth being scared for." Adelaide lifted her head to look at him. In the moonlight, his face was open, honest, beautiful in its sincerity. She thought of all the ways he had shown her kindness, all the patience he had offered, all the times he had seen her scars and not flinched. "I think I might be falling in love with you too," she admitted, "but I do not know how to do this. I do not know how to be with someone after everything that happened. We will figure it out together. No pressure, no expectations, just two people learning to care for each other." He paused. "And Adelaide, about your scars, I want you to know something." He pulled the wagon to a stop and turned to face her fully. Gently, carefully, he took her hand and pushed up her sleeve to reveal the marks on her forearm. Adelaide tensed, old shame rising, but Keane's touch was reverent. "These scars tell painful stories," he said softly. "Stories of things that should never have happened to you. But they also tell stories of survival, of strength, of a woman who refused to break even when the world tried to shatter her." He lifted her arm and pressed a kiss to one of the burned scars. "If you will let me, I would like to help you write new chapters, better ones, chapters about healing and hope and love." Tears finally came, breaking through the walls Adelaide had built. She cried for her lost family, for the girl she had been, for all the pain she had carried. And Keane held her, steady and strong, while she wept. When the tears finally stopped, Adelaide felt lighter. Emptied out, but in a good way, like a wound finally drained of poison. "I want that," she said. "I want new chapters with you." Keane's kiss was gentle, tentative, asking permission with every breath. Adelaide leaned into it, letting herself feel the warmth and tenderness he offered. It was nothing like the violence she had known. This was soft and sweet and full of promise. They arrived back at the ranch in the early hours of morning. Keane walked Adelaide to the barn, their hands linked. "You do not have to sleep out here anymore," he said. "The house has a spare room. It has a lock, and it is yours if you want it." Adelaide considered. Moving into the house felt significant, like claiming her place here more permanently. But she was ready for that, she realized, ready to stop hiding in the barn like something temporary. "I would like that," she said. They stood close together in the darkness, neither quite ready to say good night. Finally, Keane cupped her face in his hands. I meant what I said earlier. I love you, Adelaide Owens, and I will spend every day proving that you can trust me with that love. I love you too, Adelaide whispered, and felt the truth of it resonate through her entire being. The weeks that followed were the happiest Adelaide had known in years. She moved into the spare room, which had large windows overlooking the eastern hills. She woke to sunrises and fell asleep to the sound of Keane playing his guitar on the porch. They worked side by side during the days and sat close together in the evenings, talking about everything and nothing. Keane continued his gentle courtship, always mindful of Adelaide's boundaries. When she grew tense, he gave her space. When she reached for comfort, he provided it freely. Slowly, Adelaide's nightmares became less frequent. The old trauma would never fully disappear, she knew, but it was no longer the only thing that defined her. One evening in early fall, about 4 months after Adelaide's arrival, Keane found her by the creek. She sat on a flat rock, dangling her bare feet in the cool water. Her sleeves were rolled up, and she no longer seemed self-conscious about her scars. "Room for one more?" he asked. Adelaide smiled and patted the rock beside her. Keane sat and removed his boots, joining her in the simple pleasure of cold water on a warm evening. "I have been thinking," Adelaide said, "about the future." "What about it?" "I want to stay here, permanently, make this my home if you will have me." Keane turned to her, his eyes bright. "Adelaide, there is nothing I want more than for you to stay. But I want to make sure you are choosing this, not just accepting it because you do not have anywhere else to go." "I am choosing it," she said firmly. "I am choosing you, this place, this life. It is not about lacking options. It is about wanting what we have built together. Then marry me." The words came out rushed, unplanned. Keane looked almost surprised he had said them. "I know it is quick, and I know you might not be ready, but Adelaide, I want you as my wife. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to build a life with you, have children if you want them, grow old on this land together. So marry me, please." Adelaide's heart raced. Marriage had seemed impossible for so long, something other women did but not her. Not a woman with scars and trauma and blood on her hands. But looking at Keane, she saw a future she actually wanted, a future where she was not just surviving but thriving. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." Keane's whoop of joy startled birds from nearby trees. He grabbed Adelaide and spun her around, both of them laughing like children. When he set her down, he kissed her deeply, and Adelaide felt the last of her walls crumble. They were married 6 weeks later in a simple ceremony at Margaret's house in Fort Laramie. The judge who officiated was kind, and the small gathering of friends felt right. Adelaide wore her blue dress, and Keane wore his best suit. When they exchanged vows, Adelaide's voice was steady and sure. The wedding night brought its own challenges. Adelaide wanted to be with Keane fully, but old fears rose up when they retired to their room. She stood frozen by the bed, trembling. Keane saw her distress and immediately backed away. "We do not have to do anything tonight, or tomorrow night, or any night until you are ready." "I want to," Adelaide said. "I want to be close to you. I am just scared." "What if we just sleep tonight? Just hold each other. We have the rest of our lives for everything else." The patience in his offer made Adelaide love him even more. They lay down together, fully clothed, and Keane wrapped her in his arms. Adelaide pressed her face to his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Thank you for understanding," she whispered. "Always. You are my wife now, Adelaide. That means I will love you and protect you and honor you every single day. No matter what." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other, and Adelaide felt safe in a way she had not since childhood, Over the following weeks, Adelaide and Keane learned each other slowly. Adelaide's fears did not disappear overnight, but Keane's gentle patience helped her work through them. He let her set the pace, never pushing, always reassuring. When they finally came together fully, it was tender and careful, and Adelaide cried afterward not from pain, but from the overwhelming realization that intimacy could be beautiful. "I love you," she told Keane, tracing the scars on his back. "And these scars on you, they tell me you understand what it means to survive something hard." "We match," Keane said with a soft smile. "Two scarred people who found each other. Writing new chapters," Adelaide added, "the best chapters." Life on the ranch continued its steady rhythm. Adelaide took on more responsibilities, managing the household finances and even helping with the more difficult ranch decisions. She proved to have a good head for business, and the operation began to thrive under her contributions. Winter came, bringing snow and cold. Adelaide and Keane spent long evenings by the fire, planning for spring. They talked about expanding the herd, maybe hiring another hand or two. They talked about children, and Adelaide admitted she wanted them but was nervous. "What if I am not a good mother?" she asked. "What if the things that happen to me make me incapable of raising children properly?" Keane pulled her close. "You will be an excellent mother because you know what children need to feel safe and loved. You will protect our children fiercely and love them completely. I have no doubts about that." By spring, Adelaide was pregnant. The realization came with mixed emotions, joy and fear tangled together. But Keane's excitement was infectious, and Margaret's practical support was invaluable. The older woman visited often, bringing supplies and advice and encouragement. "You will do wonderfully," Margaret assured her. "And you have a good man by your side. My son may be rough around the edges, but he has a heart of gold." Adelaide's pregnancy was relatively easy, and as her belly grew, she found herself believing more and more in the future. She decorated the spare bedroom as a nursery, sewing curtains and blankets with Margaret's help. Keane built a beautiful cradle from oak, carving their initials into the headboard. On a warm October evening in 1877, Adelaide went into labor. The midwife from town came to help, along with Margaret. Keane paced outside the bedroom, alternating between praying and wearing a path in the floorboards. The labor was long and difficult. There were moments when Adelaide was certain she could not continue, but Margaret held her hand and encouraged her, and the midwife guided her through each contraction. Finally, as dawn broke over the eastern hills, a baby's cry filled the house. Adelaide collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted and elated as the midwife placed a squirming, red-faced infant on her chest. "A boy," the midwife announced. "A strong, healthy boy." Keane burst into the room, his eyes wild. "Adelaide, are you all right?" "I am perfect," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Come meet your son." Keane approached slowly, reverently, as if afraid he might break the spell. When he saw the baby, his face transformed with wonder. "He is perfect," Keane whispered, "just like his mother." They named him Jacob William Whitmore, Jacob for Adelaide's father and William for Keane's. The baby had Keane's blue eyes and Adelaide's dark hair, and from the first moment, he wrapped everyone around his tiny fingers. Those first weeks were exhausting but magical. Adelaide had never known she could feel such fierce love for another human being. Every time she looked at Jacob, she saw hope and possibility. This child would never know the violence she had experienced. He would grow up surrounded by love and safety. Keane proved to be a devoted father, taking night feedings when he could and walking the floor with a crying baby so Adelaide could rest. He sang lullabies in his deep voice and made funny faces that had Jacob gurgling with laughter. "You are wonderful with him," Adelaide said one evening, watching Keane cradle their son. "He makes it easy. They both do." Keane looked at her with such love that Adelaide's breath caught. "You have given me everything, Adelaide. A home, a purpose, a family. I will spend the rest of my life being grateful." "We saved each other," Adelaide said. "I think that is how the best love stories work." As Jacob grew, Adelaide found herself healing in ways she had not anticipated. Watching her son take his first steps, hearing his first words, seeing him discover the world with innocent wonder, it all helped rewrite her understanding of what life could be. She had been broken, yes, but she had put herself back together, and the cracks had filled with gold. She still had difficult days. Sometimes the old nightmares returned. Sometimes she saw a man who resembled her family's killer and panic would seize her. But Keane was always there to ground her, to remind her she was safe, to hold her until the fear passed. On their second wedding anniversary, Keane took Adelaide back to the creek where they had spent so many evenings. It was a warm summer night, and stars filled the sky. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small package from his pocket. Adelaide unwrapped it to find a delicate silver bracelet. Engraved on the inside were the words, "New chapters, better stories." "It is beautiful," she whispered. "I wanted you to have something that reminded you how far you have come, how strong you are, how loved." Keane fastened the bracelet around her wrist. "You came here running from your past, covered in scars that told painful stories, and you let me help you write new ones. Chapters about love and healing and building something beautiful from ashes." Adelaide kissed him deeply, pouring all her love and gratitude into that connection. "Thank you for seeing past my scars. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for loving me when I did not think I could be loved." "Thank you for letting me," Keane replied. "You are the bravest person I know." Adelaide Whitmore. They sat by the creek until late, talking about their dreams for the future. Adelaide wanted to expand their home, maybe add a room or two for more children. Keane wanted to improve their breeding stock, develop a reputation for quality cattle. They wanted to send Jacob to school to give him opportunities they had not had. "Do you ever regret it?" Adelaide asked. "Taking in a stranger that night. Your life would be simpler if you had not." "Not for 1 second. My life would be emptier without you. Less colorful, less meaningful, less full of love. You are my best decision, Adelaide. You and Jacob." Over the next few years, their family grew. Adelaide gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah Margaret after Adelaide's mother and Keane's. 2 years later, another son arrived, Henry James. The house expanded with them. New rooms added as needed. Adelaide remained involved in the ranch operations, her business acumen helping them weather economic downturns that destroyed other operations. Keane often said she was the smartest decision he had ever made, and not just because he loved her. Jacob grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved books and animals equally. Sarah was wild and fearless, always covered in dirt from whatever adventure she had invented. Henry was cheerful and affectionate, quick with hugs and laughter. Adelaide watched her children grow and knew she had broken the cycle of violence that had marked her early life. Her children would never know that particular pain. They would grow up understanding that love was patient and kind, that strength meant protecting those weaker than yourself, that scars were proof of survival, not shame. On quiet evenings after the children were asleep, Adelaide and Keane would sit on their porch and watch the sunset paint the sky. These were Adelaide's favorite moments, peaceful, ordinary, perfect. "Tell me a story," Keane would sometimes say, echoing their early days together, and Adelaide would tell him about their life. About a woman who thought she was beyond saving and a cowboy who proved her wrong. about scars that told painful stories and the love that wrote new chapters, about ashes that became gardens and wounds that became wisdom. "That is a good story," Keane would always say. "It is our story," Adelaide would reply, "and it is not finished yet." Years passed in this way. The children grew and eventually started families of their own. Jacob became a lawyer, using his intelligence to help people who had been wronged. Sarah married a cavalry officer and moved to Montana. Henry took over the ranch operations, showing the same dedication his father had. Adelaide and Keane grew older together, their hair silvering, their movements slowing but their love never diminishing. They remained each other's greatest joy, best friend, truest companion. On their 30th wedding anniversary, Keane took Adelaide to the creek again. They moved more slowly now, but the destination was the same. They sat on their favorite rock, holding hands and remembering. 30 years, Adelaide marveled. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like we have always been together. Both are true, Keane said. Time is strange that way. He turned to her, his blue eyes still bright despite his age. "I would do it all again, you know, every moment, every challenge, all of it, just to end up here with you." "Even the hard parts?" Adelaide asked. "The nightmares I had? The times I pushed you away because I was scared? Especially those parts. They taught us how to be strong together, how to fight for each other and our love." Adelaide looked at her arms, now wrinkled with age but still bearing the scars she had carried for so long. They did not hurt anymore. She barely noticed them most days. They had become just another part of her, no more significant than a freckle or a birthmark. "You did what you promised," she said quietly. "You kissed each one of my scars and wrote new chapters, better chapters. Chapters full of love and family and happiness I never thought I would have." "We wrote them together," Keane corrected gently. "I could not have done it without your courage, your willingness to trust again, your strength." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and orange. Around them, the ranch hummed with evening sounds, cattle lowing, horses nickering, the distant laughter of grandchildren visiting for the celebration. Adelaide thought back to that terrified woman who had stumbled into Fort Laramie 30 years ago, covered in blood and running from her past. That woman had been certain she was beyond redemption, beyond healing, beyond love. How wrong she had been. "What are you thinking about?" Keane asked. "About how lucky I am, how lucky we are." Adelaide squeezed his hand. "About how I thought my story was over that night I killed that man, but it was not over. It was just beginning." "The best stories are like that," Keane said. "Just when you think it is the end, it turns out to be a new beginning." As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Adelaide and Keane made their way slowly back to the house. Their children and grandchildren waited there, ready to celebrate 3 decades of marriage and love. There would be food and music and laughter, all the good things that filled a life well lived. But for just a moment, Adelaide paused at the door and looked back at the land that had become her home. The ranch where she had learned to heal, to trust, to love again. The place where she had written new chapters to replace the painful stories her scars once told. "Thank you," she whispered to the universe, to fate, to whatever force had led her to this place and this man. Keane's arm came around her waist, steady and strong even after all these years. "Ready." Adelaide smiled up at her husband, her partner, her love. Always. They walked into the house together, into warmth and family and the life they had built from ashes and hope. And if Adelaide's scars still showed beneath her sleeve, well, they were just proof she had lived and survived and thrived. They were the punctuation marks in a story that had started with pain but evolved into something beautiful. The evening passed in joy. Adelaide sat surrounded by her children and grandchildren, watching them interact and laugh and love each other. Jacob had brought his family from Denver. Sarah had traveled from Montana with her husband and their 4 children. Henry lived in the main house now, running the ranch with the same dedication his father had shown. As the night grew late and the younger grandchildren began to doze, Margaret's daughter-in-law started playing the piano. Keane stood and offered Adelaide his hand. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Whitmore?" Adelaide let him pull her to her feet, and they swayed together in the middle of the crowded room. Around them, their family watched with affection, having heard the story of how these two had found each other countless times but never tiring of it. "I love you," Adelaide whispered into Keane's shoulder. "I love you too. Today, tomorrow, always." Later, after everyone had gone to bed, Adelaide and Keane lay together in the darkness of their bedroom. Through the window, moonlight streamed across the floor. Keane's arms encircled Adelaide, just as they had every night for 30 years. "Tell me what you see when you look at your scars now," Keane said softly. Adelaide considered the question. Once, her scars had been a source of shame and pain, physical reminders of the worst moments of her life. But now, after 3 decades of love and healing, they meant something different. "I see survival," she said. "I see strength. I see proof that I endured when enduring seemed impossible. And I see the beginning of our story, because if those terrible things had not happened, I would never have ended up at that trading post. I would never have met you." "I hate that you suffered," Keane said fiercely. "I would take that pain from you if I could. I know you would. But the pain made me who I am. It made me strong enough to trust you to build this life, to raise our children to be brave and kind. I would not trade who I have become, even to erase what happened." It was perhaps the truest sign of her healing, this ability to acknowledge her trauma without being defined by it, to see how suffering had shaped her without letting it destroy her. They fell asleep like that, 2 scarred people who had found each other and built something beautiful. And Adelaide's dreams were peaceful, filled with memories of love and hope, and all the good chapters she and Keane had written together. The years continued to pass gently. Adelaide and Keane celebrated 40 years of marriage, then 45. They became great-grandparents, delighting in the newest additions to their growing family. The ranch remained prosperous under Henry's management, and the Whitmore name became synonymous with quality cattle and fair dealing throughout Wyoming. Adelaide finally felt moved to record her story, not for publication but for her descendants. She wanted them to know where they came from, to understand that strength could grow from suffering, that love could heal even the deepest wounds. She wrote late at night when the house was quiet, filling pages with her journey from that terrified woman running through the dark to the matriarch of a thriving family. When she finished, she gave the manuscript to Keane to read. He wept as he turned the pages, moved by her honesty and vulnerability. "This is powerful," he said. "This will help people." "I only wrote it for our family," Adelaide protested. "I know. But Adelaide, there are so many people out there carrying scars, feeling broken and beyond repair. Your story could show them that healing is possible, that love and patience and courage can overcome even the worst pain." Adelaide considered this. The thought of strangers reading her most vulnerable moments was frightening. But if her story could help even one person feel less alone, maybe it was worth the fear. "Let me think about it," she said. She never did publish the manuscript during her lifetime, but she gave copies to each of her children and grandchildren. They treasured these pages, passing them down through generations. And Adelaide heard from descendants who told her how much the story meant to them, how it had helped them through their own dark times. On a crisp autumn morning, 52 years after Adelaide first arrived at Keane's ranch, she woke to find him still and peaceful beside her. He had passed during the night, his heart simply stopping after 8 decades of beating strong and true. Adelaide's grief was profound but not bitter. They had been blessed with more than half a century together, had built a family and legacy that would endure long after they were gone. She held his hand and whispered her love and thanks, then called for their children. The funeral brought people from across Wyoming. Keane had touched many lives with his kindness and integrity, and they came to pay respects. Adelaide stood dry-eyed through most of it, her strength carrying her family through their grief. But when they lowered him into the ground beside the creek where they had spent so many evenings, she finally wept. Jacob stood on one side of her, Henry on the other, Sarah behind with her hands on Adelaide's shoulders. They held her up, just as she had held them up countless times over the years. Family, Adelaide thought, was everything. It was the reward for all the pain she had endured, all the healing she had fought for. After Keane's death, Adelaide lived another 3 years. She spent them surrounded by family, telling stories about their grandfather to the youngest generation, tending her garden, and sitting by the creek where she and Keane had shared so many moments. She was not sad, exactly. She missed him with an ache that never fully eased, but she had lived long enough and loved deeply enough to know that their bond transcended death. On a warm summer evening, Adelaide passed away in her sleep. She was 82 years old. Her children found her in the morning, peaceful and still, a slight smile on her face. On her nightstand was the bracelet Keane had given her for their 2nd anniversary, the one engraved with their motto, "New chapters, better stories." They buried her beside Keane, overlooking the land they had loved and the creek where their romance had deepened. The headstone was simple: Adelaide Owens Whitmore, 1854–1936. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she transformed her scars into stories of hope. But Adelaide's true legacy was not in stone or even in the pages of her manuscript. It lived in her descendants, who carried forward her lessons about courage and healing. It lived in the ranch that continued to thrive under Henry's children and grandchildren. It lived in the way her family loved each other, fiercely and loyally, the way Adelaide and Keane had loved each other. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the light hit just right, ranch hands swore they could see 2 figures by the creek, sitting close together, holding hands and watching the sunset. Whether this was ghost or memory or wishful thinking, no one could say for sure. But the story persisted, the cowboy and his scarred bride, still writing their chapters together even in the hereafter. Because true love, the kind that Adelaide and Keane shared, does not end when the physical body fails. It continues in the lives touched, the lessons taught, the family built. It continues in every act of courage, every choice to trust again after betrayal, every decision to hope despite pain. Adelaide's scars had told painful stories of violence and loss and trauma. But Keane had kept his promise. Together, they had written new chapters, better chapters. Chapters full of love and healing and the quiet triumph of 2 wounded souls who found each other and refused to let their past define their future. And in the end, that was the greatest story of all.